So in the previous tutorial, we talked about encoding an object, and this time we are going to be talking about encoding an object that has nested object and also manipulating nested values. So basically we are trying to drill down into this object and then try to manipulate the values in the nested object. So for instance, let's say we have this JSON literal that represents a personal data. So we call it let's call it JSON literal. So this represents an address, personal data, and it has an address nested inside the structure, as you can see. So we are talking about how do we actually grab hold of this. Now, if you are talking about JSON literal, we'll be talking about converting this JSON literal to Scala types, and that will be decoding. We don't want to create that confusion. So let's stay where we are. Okay, so we are talking about nested objects. So in this case, let's say we have an address object like it has city and street. So I'm going to create an address object. Again, I provided the steps on my website as a guide. I'm giving detailed explanation in this video. So in case you get stuck, just look at my website. You find all the details you need. And we have this address object is equal to JSON. You already know how to do JSON.object and specify the fields. So in this case, we have city, and we have this city is called. Of course, you have to decode all the fields. I call city .json. That's JSON, and the second one is going to be the street. The street number is going to be 56. Or 45, that's JSON. It doesn't matter at this point. So this is how let me just format this. So this is the address object. We want to nest this address object inside a personal data object. So you can perform as much nesting as you want. I'm going to show you how to drill down deep inside the structure to actually grab hold of values in there. So we have personal data that has the address object nested inside. So I'm going to create another object. So it's going to be personal data. So an object is equal to JSON.object. And now this personal data has a name. Name is Kindson. Of course, you have to convert to JSON. That's JSON. And this time, pay attention because we now have to use the second field. This time is going to be the address. Just give a sec. So this address now is a nested object, which is address object. Okay. So now we have a personal data object that contains a nested object, and at this point we want to go to the city and change this city. We want to manipulate the city, but we have this personal data object. How do we go from personal data object to this? Okay, so we have the two objects, but we can only manipulate one object at a time, right? So we only have the personal data. We want to manipulate this personal data, but we want to drill down into this object. We don't have this object expanded. We only have this at this point. So this object is somewhere for sure. But when we are manipulating, we want to traverse the structure of the JSON, and this is all we have. Theoretically, you can actually grab this and just dump it here, but let's not create that complication for now. All right, so there are a number of tools we can use. There are hcursor, downfield with focus. With focus, it's also a cursor. What is called an A cursor, this is hcursor. Hcursor is used to obtain a cursor that you will use to traverse your JSON. So we are sure that the JSON exists, and we are going to use hcursor here to traverse this JSON, this personal data object. And now when we say downfield is now holding or capturing a field in the structure, right? The field we want to focus on. So when we say downfield, we have to specify a field. So we can call this downfield as many times as possible recursively to continue to drill down to the field we want. With focus is also a cursor, but when we call downfield to the field and we have a nested object there's another JSON. We don't use a hcursor, we now use an A cursor. So when we use this keyword with focus, we obtain an A cursor. And then after we perform the manipulation, we use top to go back to the top, to the original JSON. So this is very interesting. I'm going to show you how to do it at this point. So I want to create a transformed personal data object. So I'm going to say val personal data 2, that's a transformed one, is equal to JSON. Yeah, so this is important. Let's see. So I want to manipulate this personal data object and change the address, okay? Address the city to something else. So I'm going to say address objects, right? Dot h cursor. We obtain a cursor on the address object. And we are going to say dot down field. And what's the field at this point? The field is the address, right? So the field, I think, did I mix up? Yeah, the field is the address. So we want to get to the address first before we get to this object that is nested, because the address object is nested inside the address. So the field here is going to be address. We are now going to drill down into the address object this time to obtain another field which is nested. So it's going to be the down field, and it's going to be city. All right, so we have this, and we are now going to obtain an a cursor this time on this city. Now this city may not exist, we don't know, so that's why we need a different cursor. So instead of saying that h cursor, of course h cursor doesn't show anymore, so I'm going to say that with focus. That with focus is going to now give us an a cursor. So this a cursor, now we are going to try to apply the function to this city and then change it maybe to uppercase or whatever I want to do with this city. So we have with focus, and we are now going to say the map. So we have so I think I'm just going to check dot map string. So I'm mixing it up, so I think I'm correct. So it's going to be dot map string, and we are going to apply the function we want to apply. So this time I'm going to apply a new function. The function I want to apply is concat. So I'm going to say I'm going to concatenate this city with the country. So concat, I'm going to say in Nigeria. So this city is in Nigeria, so I'm just going to manipulate it. Instead of having the city, I'm going to just add in Nigeria as well. Okay, we've manipulated it, we've drilled down to the address field, we've manipulated it, and this time we want to go all the way back to the original object, to the main object, which is this top. So if I go back here, I can say dot top. Okay, so the top, we are back to the original object at this time. So this top, more or less, I think it should be a cursor as well. So you can see it's a cursor to the top. This time it's not with focus on the next head field, but it gets us all the way back to the parent, not the top, right? It takes us back to the top, to the very beginning of the structure. And then we want to do whatever we want to do. Let's say we want to now print it out, convert it to JSON. So I'm going to say, what's happening here? So I'm going to say that, what is happening? Oh, I know, yeah. So I'm going to say that map, and now I'm going to map it to JSON by using spaces 2. So spaces 2, remember I mentioned it in the first tutorial, is just to create a pretty formatted JSON, right? So now what I want you to take note of how IntelliJ has helped us. Actually, Circe has helped us to see what all this is all about. So the first one is a h cursor, the second one is an a cursor, because we are drilling down into a field that may not exist. With focus is also an a cursor, because the fields there may also not exist. Then we have the top, going back all the way to the top, and then we are going to produce a JSON representation of this personal data too. So let's now print it out to see what we have. So I'm going to say print line, and we're going to print out personal data too, and let's see. So I'm going to shift this guy up and save everything. And at this point, we should have an output. So we have none, yeah. So none is printed out. Let's go troubleshoot to see where the problem is coming from. So let's see. So the down field for the first one is address. Let's see. So we have personal, yeah. So this cannot be. So what we are trying to traverse that needs a H cursor is personal data object, not the address object. So that's where the problem is coming from. So it's going to be personal data, not personal data 2, personal data objects. Sorry. Okay. So at this point, we should have a correct result. Let me just check the downfield address, the downfield city focus concat. Okay. So let me clean up here and let's print out this by saving everything. And now you can see that we have a neat printout. Now you can see that the city has been manipulated and adjusted to concat with in Nigeria, as you can see right here. So this basically is on how to manipulate nested objects using Circe. And again, I'd like you to take note of the difference between a H cursor and an A cursor, because this is something you might encounter sometimes. A cursor includes the possibility of failure, but H cursor is simply used to track the history in the JSON structure that we are sure exists. All right, so this is the end of this part, and the next one we are now going to actually be building encoders. What we did now, we're actually using encoders provided by Circe. In the next tutorial, we'll actually be building encoders for custom types, right? So we are going to create the class, create the object, and build encoders for it. I'd like to stop here. I'd like to remind you to subscribe to my channel if this has been informative for you, and leave me a comment if you have any challenges following my classes. I remain Kind on the Tech Pro, and I'm always there for you.